Joy.
Yeah, I can relate to having a cold. I have a negative COVID test and a slight cold as well. So I understand not feeling well. And, obviously Joe Biden comes in with certain deficits. He has a stutter. It is more difficult for him to communicate for that reason. So there's a lot to mitigate the way that he speaks, and you can understand it. And we've observed him for a long time. That said, I, too, was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak. And I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. President Biden had one job tonight, and it was one primary job. And yes, it was to litigate Donald Trump's, criminality and all of those things. But he had to settle his own party. He needed to settle Democrats. Democrats, they always talk about Democrats are bedwetters and Democrats are always panicking. Yes, Democrats are always panicking. They're always scared, right? They're always thinking they're going to lose. Like, Democrats are very pessimistic. This is just neurotic. Who they are. They're neurotic. But Joe Biden's job was to reassure them tonight. His job was to calm his party, to make them feel that, yes, I can do this. I have 4 more years in me. I have the ability and the stamina and the strength to do 4 more years. He did not do that. He did the opposite of that. He made them more panicked. The people who were texting me were even more panicked. They actually expected it to be better than it was. And now they're in I won't say a full-fledged panic, but it's getting there.
And are people that you're talking to who are expressing these concerns, are these people who are involved in Democratic politics, or are these liberals watching TV?
These are not liberals watching TV. These are campaign people. These are people who are either Democratic operatives. These are people who are former, sort of Obama world administration people. These are people who are in the business. Okay. So the civilians are also panicking. They're also texting me, but I was trying to kind of ignore the civilians and really talk to the campaign folks. People are, they're worried, and there is, it's not a full drumbeat yet, but there is talk of, look, here's the thing. I know a lot of politicians. I just happen to know a lot of them at a lot of levels. They all believe that they have a unique ability to run the race that they passionately want to run. And I know for a fact that Joe Biden passionately believes that he is the only person who can beat Donald Trump, and he has evidence of it because he did it before. Right. He knows that he has certain demographic strengths that Donald Trump cannot counter. He is the real working class white guy that's actually Donald Trump's base, so he knows how to talk to them. He believes that he is the only person that can do it. The problem is, after tonight, his party doesn't believe that.
I want to hear from Lawrence and Chris as well. I first want to go to our colleague Alex Wagner, who is on site in Atlanta. She has been watching the debate in the spin room. Alex, what's the reaction that you've been hearing there?
I'm not going to put a fine sheen on it or a spin on it, even though I'm in the spin room, Rachel. There has been a uniformly negative reaction to Biden's performance tonight. Surely, as Joy said, this was about revealing who Donald Trump was, but it was also Joe Biden battling a caricature of himself as an enfeebled person, an impression that Trump has been eager to convey to the country. And he did nothing to disabuse, I think, the country of the notion that he is very old and was lost frequently in that debate. I mean, on answers that should have been, to put it bluntly, a layup for him, whether it was abortion or the attack on abortion medication. His answers were rambling and incoherent. He turned a response on abortion into a mention of migrant killing. I mean, this is a person that clearly was over-prepared and had a lot of different points that were sort of swimming around in his head. And as a result, it felt like the answers that were legible, if you will, were not nearly delivered with the force and the clarity that they should have been. And I will say Donald Trump was in some ways the most Trumpy he has been lately, full of lies and misinformation. But it was almost an afterthought. I think that the press that I've spoken with and the sort of the focus in this room is just, the Biden campaign wanted this debate. This was their idea. And this is what happened as part of their strategy. It is confounding. We were told earlier this evening that the Biden spin team would be only making brief remarks in the room. And I don't know whether that is indicative of a group of people who understood the weaknesses that their candidate had in advance of this debate. But you can surely understand the logic of that after the fact.
Alex, we've just had confirmation just while we have been speaking with you just this moment that in just a moment we're going to have Vice President Kamala Harris joining us live. So that's going to happen here just within a matter of moments. Lawrence, I also want to get your response. I think one of the interesting things that Alex said there was that some of the poor coherence and poor answers from Donald Trump are being viewed as standard Trump and therefore not newsworthy, while the performance from President Biden is being viewed as newsworthy because it came in below expectations.
Yeah, in any sort of normal universe, you would think the candidate who during the presidential debate said, "I didn't have sex with a porn star," was the loser of that debate.
Yeah.
That would be the normal scorecard. So let's just remember that so far, the only thing we've been concentrating on here is optics, that thing we call optics, and in this case also audio because of the aging voice of Joe Biden. But the question is that we don't know the answer to is voters out there who went into this debate thinking they're for Biden or they're for Trump or thinking whatever they were thinking. What in this debate of substance that was true, if anything, moved their vote? So if you really wanted to look at it in terms of what is it supposed to be, it's supposed to be an illuminating forum in which you learn something about a candidate that you didn't know before that is true, not that you learn a lie from the candidate. That's not what the objective is. But given that the optics is the way the game is played, what we don't yet know, and we'll know in polling a week from now or so, is what was the effect of all of this? Mm-hmm. What was the effect of the guy who said, I did not have sex with the porn star? What was the effect of the convicted criminal candidate pointing to the other candidate and calling him a criminal? What is the effect of all of that back and forth? And I think we're guessing about what the effect is of the realization that Joe Biden is actually as old as his birth certificate says he is. His voice is that old, too, but he's 10 years younger than Warren Buffett. And both of them have a job that is essentially making decisions. And what was not shown to me in a way that was true in that debate is that Joe Biden has made bad decisions in the presidency. I don't see the set of bad decisions. And what was done in the Biden presidency was certainly underdeveloped in a debate where you never heard the word infrastructure, for example. Like, it was pretty underdeveloped as this went on. And that has a lot to do with the nature of the rules of these debates.
I think what you just put your finger on to me is sort of the whole issue around where we find ourselves. The job of the president is making decisions. The job of a presidential candidate is to communicate. Mm-hmm. It just is. That's the job. It's a communications job. It is talking to people and communicating them, persuading them, trying to get people who don't agree with you. And I think Joe Biden has a very good record on making decisions, and I think he's a very poor communicator right now. And that inability to communicate, I mean, I see this all the time. We will cover things on our show all the time. This big OPEC oil trade they did, where they bought high, they bought oil very cheap and then they sold very high. They made all this money. They kind of broke the back of OPEC. And people say, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's cool. Joe Biden should be the person communicating that. Joe Biden is not good at communicating his own record. Mm-hmm. And in the context of a campaign right now, his job, number one, is communicating. So that, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think you're right about the decision making. But I think the reason that there is all this, anxiety and all this stuff is because ultimately, and particularly in the television age, a lot of the presidency is communicating, but particularly when you're running for re-election, when it is the thing that is the most important thing.
But there's another job of and this is even pre the television era. There's a reason that FDR was never shown in his wheelchair. There's a reason that John F. Kennedy pretended to be a vigorous man when he was certainly not. And Kennedy accelerated it, and I think Reagan super accelerated it because he was an actor and he was a Hollywood figure. And it's only gotten more intense until we got to President Obama, who became popular partly because rap artists were taking his speeches and turning them into hit music video. It's accelerated, but it was even true during the Roosevelt era. The president is an avatar. for the American people.
Right.
And the American people have a very high opinion of themselves. The American people think of themselves, this country invented the concept of the superhero for a reason. Because the American people think we're Captain America. They think we're strong, they think we're robust, and they want their president to look that way. If William Howard Taft had lived in an era where they saw pictures of the president, he wouldn't have been the president. Americans want the president to represent them in the world in a certain way that has vigor, that has strength. Al Gore was a brilliant man, an excellent decision maker, made excellent decisions as vice president. Americans didn't care. They wanted the guy they thought was cooler. That's just real talk about Americans and about American voters. And so to your point, Joe Biden, yes, you can look at his record, and it is factually one of the best records of any modern president. It is a top 10 president's record. But you can't become president again when America looks at you and that avatar to them looks broken.
Well, let's not pretend this is a good thing.
Right.
Let's just remember that what's happened here is imagery has taken control of the way we see presidential campaigns.
Yes.
FDR could not possibly have survived a debate like this at any time, and he was arguably our best president. Could not possibly have done it. He was in much worse physical shape in his last presidential campaign, and was in effect much older, because he turns out he was in the last year of his life in his last presidential campaign, which he won. But we don't have a better government because we've turned to the most superficial components of politics to decide our candidates. If we did that in the 1940s, FDR would not have been president, and, good luck with World War II.
Can I say?
My colleague Alex Wagner is standing by right now with California Governor Biden surrogate Gavin Newsom. Alex, I cannot wait for this conversation.
Well, neither can I. Well, you guys can't see it, but there like all of Trump's shortlist VP nominees are walking around on the ground. Nobody wants to talk to them. It was like human piranhas descending on the governor after the end of this debate. Governor, what was your reaction to what we saw on screen?
Well, not on the substance. He won the debate. I'm old school. I'm old-fashioned. That's what matters to me. I thought the lies, I was taking notes about all the lies. I ran out of paper. Donald Trump, no accountability on those lies, talking down the American economy, talking down our democracy. That was alarming. This is a world we're living in now. Donald Trump created where 13-year-olds have to deliver the child of the person that impregnated them. This is a world that Donald Trump has created. And so for me, it was daylight and darkness. And I'm very proud of the president's record, and I'm very proud for his vision of the future.
Let's talk about the substance, though, because I feel like on the signature issue that Democrats have, which is abortion, the president's response was garbled and undirected at best. Do you feel like he did what he needed to do on an issue that could motivate voters in the polls?
I think it's significantly insignificant because it's de minimis, because the American people have made up their mind. They don't support the policies of Donald Trump. They certainly don't support his policies or his assertion somehow the American people always wanted this to be states' rights, which was laughable and absurd. So from that perspective, I don't think that will matter. You saw it in all the elections since Dobbs, where Democrats are overperforming. We keep winning, and we have to keep our mind. So I think for all of us, worry less and do more. We have the opportunity to turn the page. We have the opportunity to put our heads down. We have the opportunity to universally have the back of this president who's had our back. You don't turn your back. You go home with the one that brought you to the dance. 100% all in. And I was very, very proud that he was able to articulate the work that he has done and lay a foundation of understanding of the lies and the deceit that continue to come out of Donald Trump's mouth.
You were out there getting a chorus of questions about whether Biden should step down. There is panic that has set in. There is panic that has set in among people who have watched this debate, who are Democrats, people who are strategists, and some even inside Democratic campaigns. Do you think it's unfounded?
Well, I think it's unhelpful, and I think it's unnecessary. We've got to go in and got to keep our heads high. And as I say, we've got to have the back of this president. You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that? It's been a masterclass. 15.6 million jobs. That's 8 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. The only thing the last 3 Republican presidents have in common is recessions. Democrats deliver. This president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment. With all due respect, the more time we start having these conversations, go down these rabbit holes, it's unhelpful to our democracy, our fate and future of this country, the world. They need us right now to step up, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
Not to belabor the point, but I mean, this was a Biden campaign strategy. This was their idea to do this debate now. Yeah. And I wonder what you think they got out of it. What was Biden's strongest moment from this debate in your mind?
Well, again, back to the substance. He got stronger. He had more stamina over the debate.
But was there one moment that you think sticks?
Well, it's difficult to assess. I need a little bit more objectivity and time away from this in the context of trying to pick those moments. But look, at the bottom line is this was an opportunity to sort of distill the essence of what this campaign's about. You're hearing the messaging from the campaign distilled down what that key message is. Turn the page. Go to North Carolina tomorrow. We'll get out there on the road. Surrogates need to step up. We need to step in to support this grassroots effort all across the United States. We need to raise money, and we need to understand what's at stake if we don't. We need to understand what's at stake if we turn our back at this critical time. There's too much.
If Biden and Trump are remembered for any particular line, to me it seemed like it would be the line, "I didn't have sex with a porn star," which is not something we've heard on a debate stage before.
No, when you use the words "I didn't have sex with a porn star," you're not winning, you're losing at that case.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I know our friends in New York have questions for you. So if we could go back to New York City, Rachel.
Hey, Governor Newsom, it's Rachel Maddow here. Thank you so much for taking time here. When you said worry less and do more, do what? What do you think that people who support President Biden, people in Democratic politics, people who are planning on voting for him, who are worried that he seemed older than they expected tonight, that he didn't seem to reassure people on stamina issues, as Joy was saying before, what should people do?
Well, talk about what he has done and what he's done recently, what he's delivered in bipartisan, unprecedented legislation. An infrastructure bill, the CHIPS and Science Act, the work that he's done across a spectrum of issues to deliver for the American people, and the vision he's laid out for the future, and contrast that, not just lifting up those issues, but contrast that and drive that contrast of the dystopian vision that Donald Trump has to the future. It's a binary choice at the end of the day. And so we've got to drive that contrast even harder. And Trump didn't make that better tonight because he continued the lies and the grievances and the retribution and the language that no one else wants to see moving forward. He's all about the past, American reverse. He wants to bring us back to a pre-1960s world. Voting rights, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, access to abortion, access to contraception. That's what we need to talk about. That's what's on the ballot. Democracy, the fate and future of this country, and for that matter, our alliances around the world. We need to buck up and focus on what's at stake and not navel gaze and not look back. You look forward. It's always about tomorrow. Everything's about tomorrow.
In terms of bucking up and not navel gazing and moving forward, if you were to advise the campaign how to turbocharge, how to kick up into another level, I do think they're going to have to make up ground they didn't previously have to make up because of this debate performance. What can they do that they're not doing? Should they do the second debate in September? Should they change course in some of the ways that they are trying to communicate? I hear you making a very strong case for President Biden's record, but I don't know what they should do to make that case more strongly than they have been.
Well, I think you just double down on what we're doing. We're all about to out to 6 states across this country. I'm just doing my small part. There's hundreds and hundreds of us that will be going out. We have a clear message. We have clear contrast with Donald Trump and his performance tonight and his doubling down on lies and deceit. We have an opportunity to build a grassroots, to get people to recognize what's at stake if we don't unify as a Democratic Party. And again, it's a choice. This is a choice election. And so, look, all I know what to do is wake up tomorrow and do more and do better and worry less. It's about action. It's about passion. It's about purpose. And it's about having the back of a president that's had our back.
Governor Newsom, it's Jen Psaki. I wanted to ask you, you've talked a lot about President Biden and his performance and his accomplishments. If voters out there could see one answer from Donald Trump tonight, or one moment that stuck out to you where you thought people cannot elect this man, what would that be? I mean, what should people out there who have social media platforms who like President Biden be pushing out there that was damaging and terrible from Donald Trump tonight? The most.
The way he talks about immigrants offends me. I live in the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. 27% of my state is foreign-born. It's not a question of tolerating that. We celebrate it. It's a point of pride. We practice pluralism. The way he talks about immigrants, the way he talks down to the American people in terms of what makes this nation so great, and that's our capacity to live together and advance together across our differences. These are fundamental. It's not about one quick clip. It's about all of the things stacked together that represent not only what he said tonight, but what he said over his entire career. He doesn't have your back, period, full stop. We must have the back of the President of the United States, Joe Biden, at this critical moment, and focus on tomorrow, focus on the future, focus on the vision, a compelling vision that will unite this country moving forward, and talk about the stakes of falling short. Liberalism, illiberalism, daylight, darkness.
Governor, I am sensing a frustration with the format of this debate, the reductivist nature of the debate, the sort of carnival-like atmosphere of the debate, and a desire to get back to the essence of the issues and the choice ahead for the American public. Yeah. Having said that, there is another debate scheduled.
Yeah.
Do you think that Joe Biden should participate in it?
Absolutely. I mean, we've all had those nights. All of us, not one person watching, hasn't had those nights.
Well, we've not all been in presidential debates.
But it's not about debates. You have good moments, you have bad moments. You wake up the next day, you dust it off, and you move forward. It's all about resiliency. That's what the American people are about. That's what the American economy is about. That's what Joe Biden's been about his entire life. I've seen this over and over, this movie before. Oh, Joe Biden should pack it up in the primaries. He's got no chance. After Iowa, he never gives up. He's never giving up fighting for us, fighting for democracy, our future, kids, our grandkids. So we've got to have his back in this respect. And yeah, I hope he does come back. And I hope he is back on the stage in another debate. Absolutely.
Well, if he is, I'm sure we're going to want to talk to you after that one, too. Governor, I know you have a busy day job. Thank you for your time tonight. We really very, very deeply appreciate it.
It's great to be with you. Thanks.
Back to you, Rachel.
Thanks.
Alex Wagner with California Governor Gavin Newsom. Many thanks to you both. Jen. Well, let's bring in somebody who has operated at the highest levels of the Democratic Party and still has many, many contacts there and has been talking to people for us so we can find out what's happening in those circles. MSNBC political analyst, President Obama's campaign manager in 2008, David Plouffe, is with us. David, I know you have been talking to some muckety-mucks in Democratic politics, including what we gingerly call the donor class. What was your personal David Plouffe take on what you saw tonight, and what are you hearing from the people you've been speaking with?
Well, I think consistent with your reaction, Rachel, and others on the panel, it's kind of a DEFCON 1 moment. I do think Lawrence and Chris give a very important caveat. Listen, I've been deeply involved in presidential campaign debates. Some went well, some didn't go well. The only thing that matters, and you won't really know for 3 or 4 days, is how the voters that will decide this election will react. I would also add, I have deep suspicion that Donald Trump with swing voters bombed as well. And that's the tragedy. Because I think Joe Biden, the biggest thing in this election is voters' concerns, and it's both swing voters and base voters with his age, and those were compounded tonight. So what the campaign's going to do is try and run ads. Biden will go out tomorrow and the next day being aggressive. I mean, it wasn't just his craziness and his lies, although that was apparent in every question. Like, Donald Trump wouldn't even answer questions about child care or the opioid crisis. You know, talk about someone who's consumed with himself, which is what the message the Biden campaign wanted to land. But the concern level is quite high. This is a race that, it reminds me a little bit of 2012, but in reverse. We had a small but significantly important lead in battleground states. We had a really bad first debate. Race tightened, but we're okay. Biden is behind narrowly right now. He's the one that has to change the equation here. And the biggest barrier that's keeping his ceiling too low is concerns about age. And I think that's the tragedy, because I think Trump had so many openings that you could have just scissored him up on tonight. And Biden did have a couple of good moments, but I think at the end of the day, the overwhelming reaction, again, it doesn't matter, quite frankly, what people like us say. Right. It's what voters say. And if they were already concerned about is he up for it, and the way I think about it is, sadly, this really pains me to say this, they're 3 years apart. They seemed about 30 years apart tonight. And I think that's going to be the thing that voters really wrestle with coming out of this.
And David, in terms of people in Democratic politics and people who are have the kind of influence that donors have in Democratic politics, which is, you know, there's a PhD thesis to be done right there, even in the premise of this question. What kind of reactions are you hearing in terms of what changes they want to see, what sort of reaction they want to see from Team Biden in response to what happened tonight?
Well, Rachel, I mean, there's really only two scenarios. One, which is not going to happen, would be Joe Biden decides to step down, and we have a fascinating 7-week campaign to get the support of delegates in Chicago. The only other option is somehow to right the ship here. Now, I'm not sure whether Trump will debate again. It's fascinating. He may think this one will well for him. He wants another one. You could certainly see him saying, I'm done. I'm not going to do this again. So that is a huge question mark because Biden needs that next debate now. But all you can do if you're a Democrat is ask yourself what I can do, which is, yeah, we missed an opportunity here tonight, a significant opportunity, but it's still a close race, and you're running against Donald Trump. And again, I think this will come out. But, you know, I've talked to people who are doing dial groups and focus groups with swing voters. And as much as they were concerned about Biden's performance, and they were, you know, they weren't. No one was saying, I'm really excited about Donald Trump coming back to the presidency. He reconfirmed all the reasons they voted against him in 2020. And again, I look at that as a huge missed opportunity because he really provided a lot of openings, I think, for Biden or any candidate to really exacerbate that. So I think Democrats will spend 24, 48, 72 hours, you know, in some state of crisis. But then we have to find a way forward. But, you know, this was obviously a significant moment. It's the most important 90 minutes of the campaign, and therefore was a missed opportunity.
There is no one scorecard for determining who won and who lost last night, but a consensus does seem to be emerging. Ross Perot, the star of the night, partly because no one knew what to expect. Bill Clinton, just good enough. And President Bush, he'll have to do much better.
It was October 1992. George H.W. Bush, Poppy Bush, was president. He was running for re-election. And at the first presidential debate that year, he absolutely bombed. If that Tom Brokaw stand-up was not enough to convince you, check out the headline in the Boston Herald the next day. Bush strikes out. A Snap poll taken after the debate found the percentage of voters who thought President Bush had won the debate was in the teens. Was 18%. That first debate went very terribly for Poppy Bush, and indeed, he went on to lose his effort to be reelected in 1992. But look at the rest of the data here. The first debate also went terribly for Poppy Bush's son in 2004 when he was looking for a second term, running for re-election against John Kerry. Reviews of his first debate performance were just as brutal as the ones had been for his dad. Like this one from The Atlantic, quote, "That was George Bush's worst performance in a debate by far ever. My mantra had been that neither Bush nor Kerry had ever lost a debate. That is no longer true." George W. Bush's approval rating a week before that debate was as high as 54%. After his terrible performance in that first debate, it dropped 7 points just from that one debate. But of course, he went on to win re-election anyway in 2004. Then there was what happened to President Obama in 2012. Again, looking for a second term, running for re-election up against his opponent, Mitt Romney. The first debate that year, a disaster for the incumbent president. The headlines were unanimous. Obama snoozes and loses. Romney was hungry. Obama was flat. Mitt Romney comes out on top as Obama stumbles in first debate. Obama had a 9-point lead in the polls in September 2012. After his terrible performance in October, he ended up tied with Romney in the polls. But then Obama won election in November and got a second term. Regardless of the eventual electoral outcome, it is almost an axiom of politics that first debates are rocky for incumbent presidents. Now, why is that? What is it about being an incumbent president that makes you suck at your first debate when you're running for re-election? I don't know. Lots of competing explanations out there, but it does seem to be something that universally holds. I will also mention that Donald Trump was no exception. When he was the incumbent 4 years ago, it was not that long ago. I'm sure you remember how that went for him. But I think this headline at The Guardian sums it up well. This was after the first debate with Donald Trump as the incumbent and Joe Biden as the challenger. Quote, "Donald Trump ensures first presidential debate is national humiliation." It's always the case. And tonight, Joe Biden was the 9th incumbent president in a televised general election debate. He and his team very, very, very much wanted to defy the debating incumbent curse. They did not defy the debating incumbent curse. That said, losing the first debate is not a fatal thing for incumbent presidents. It is a historical certainty that they lose the first debate. But in terms of its overall electoral impact, history says meh. Joining us now is former Republican Party chairman, the co-host of The Weekend here on MSNBC, our beloved friend Michael Steele. Mr. Steele, it is great to see you.
How are you doing, my friend? What a night! Everybody rested and raring to go, right?
We are hydrated. We did our weird yoga poses that make our backs hurt less when we sit here for 6 hours at a time. We're great. What did you think of the debate, and what have you been hearing from people tonight who saw it?
So I have thoughts, and I'll start with where you left off. Everything you said about those other presidential debates is absolutely 100% correct. But what you did not have after them was the incumbent president's party openly musing about taking him off the ticket. And I think that is something that is very different in this one. Tonight, you have MAGA gloating and Democrats outwardly worrying about the state of the race, to the point that they are not hiding their discussions about how they get Joe off the ticket. I think a lot of that is unfortunate. I think a lot of that is overblown at the moment, but I get the emotion. I thought Claire was an exhibit of that emotion, of that gut punch that she referenced, that a lot of Democrats are feeling. But here are a couple of things that I think need to be focused on, just kind of putting my sort of campaign party hat on and sort of rally the troops and get your ass in gear conversation. One is Nicole said it best. Own tonight. Don't pretend it was something it wasn't. Sit down with Joe, play that tape, play it, and slow-mo that sucker if you have to get him to appreciate exactly what it was we saw and how he performed and how in many respects he let himself down. Because if any of us know the president, and a lot of us do, have seen him over these many, many years, we know how much he regards being honest about that. So let him be honest about that and have that assessment, and take him out of situations where he's seemingly lying about his performance. He will endear himself. He will move people to appreciate a lot of things about him if he owns the moment. I thought, for example, Lawrence was also very clear in how this thing needs to get laid out. Again, don't overthink what happened. Rethink how you move forward. Reimagine what tomorrow looks like. And by tomorrow, I mean Morning Joe tomorrow, all right? And really begin to put in place the next set of building blocks. Because right now, MAGA's on the run. They got this, baby. You should see and hear the stuff that's coming up, right? They are primed. They're ready. They're like, we told you this is what he was. Joe Biden is old and out of date. Donald Trump is the man. All of that crazy. But Donald Trump is a serial liar. He's a petulant little boy in a man's orange suit, right? And he sits here and he tells lie after lie after lie after lie. Joe Biden, to Jen Psaki's point, was not prepared to deal with that. And he was ill prepared because he was fed numbers instead of doing what I've said from the very beginning of the day. I was on Morning Joe and said Joe Biden would be the nominee of the Democratic Party, because Joe Biden is his best when he is Joe Biden. And they forgot that. His campaign forgot that. They put that cocoon around him as president, and they fact him up with all these facts and numbers, and the man got lost. So there's some things that are recoverable here, but they have to first start to own the moment. And you don't really kind of do that by pushing the vice president out there. I think the president at some point has to look America in the eye and go, I'm sorry I let you down. I should have been better prepared. And you know me better than that, and that's not how my parents raised me, and that's not how I'm going to lead you. And I think that moment sort of takes what happened with Donald Trump, because guess what then, Rachel? All of a sudden, all the stuff that we're not talking about that we heard and saw with Donald Trump kind of comes back and refocus. Begins to be, people begin to look at it and go, yeah, now that I think about it, Donald Trump said some crazy behind stuff, right? So I think that Democrats need to, bring it down, stop the, let me tell you what I'm hearing from operatives and others, and just reset.
Michael Steele, tough love. We always get tough love from you, Michael. Thank you so much. All right, joining us now from the debate spin room in Atlanta is our beloved pal, former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri, also an MSNBC political analyst. Claire, I'm dying to know what you thought about how things went tonight and what you've been hearing since.
Well, first, the easy part. Donald Trump is a liar, a flawed character, mean, a jerk, very unlikable, and that was obvious tonight. Now, the hard and heartbreaking part. I have been a surrogate for some presidential candidates in my time. I know what the job is after a debate of a surrogate. I've never wanted to be a surrogate more than I do right now. Because when you're a surrogate, you have to focus on the positives. But I have said very clearly and very plainly on this network, and my job now is to be really honest. Joe Biden had one thing he had to do tonight, and he didn't do it. He had one thing he had to accomplish, and that was reassure America that he was up to the job at his age. And he failed at that tonight. Now, does that mean that my phone blowing up with senators and campaign operatives and donors, big donors from all over the country, does that mean that Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate? I don't know that. I think we'll know a lot more in a few weeks, how this plays out, how the polling plays out. But I think a couple of things are going on right now. I think I'm not the only one whose heart is breaking right now. There's a lot of people who watched this tonight and felt terribly for Joe Biden. And, you have to ask, how did we get here? How do we get to the point that we're spending a whole lot of time talking about the vice president tonight instead of talking about the president? And I don't know how the rest of this story is written. I don't know if things can be done to fix this. They might. And, Trump is so terrible that this might heal itself. But based on what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and some of them are people that are in high elective offices in this country, and you might guess where they serve, there is a lot of more than hand-wringing tonight. I do think people feel like that we are confronting a crisis.
Claire, I want to talk to you about this in very nuts and bolts terms. Given what you are describing, the kind of reaction that you're describing among people in the kinds of positions that you're describing, or at least alluding to, what can be done? What do you personally think should be done?
Well, I think, listen, this could be a situation where everyone talks it out over the next few days. I do think that this is a time that Ted Kaufman and Ricchetti and Donlin and Ron Klain are going to have a heart-to-heart with the president about his ability to exude strength. And listen, nobody is a bigger fan of Kamala Harris than I am. And Gavin Newsom did a remarkable job tonight as a surrogate. And what he said, it's not that I disagree with anything they're saying, but those two people are signaling to a whole lot of Americans that are paying attention, how come they're not running? How come the Democratic Party doesn't have them at the top of the ticket instead of using them to shore up what have become, after tonight, some pretty glaring weaknesses in our president?
But, I mean, specifically, though, given that we are 130 days out, and the Democratic convention is very, very, very late, And President Biden has been confronted with these kinds of questions from the very beginning of this campaign, actually from before the beginning of this campaign. As soon as he was sworn in, people started talking to him about say now that you won't run again. And he's been firm that he's the guy. And if he's not going to jump, nobody's going to push him. The type of crisis, in your words, that you're describing has to have a resolution. And if the resolution is not going to be that President Biden is going to leave the ticket, what else can be done? What else can be changed about the campaign? Are you saying the only solution is to take him off the ticket?
No, I don't know, honestly, what the solution is tonight. I know how this felt tonight. It felt like a gut punch to most people in this country who are paying close attention and know how dangerous Donald Trump is to all the values that we hold dear. And so I think it'll take a couple of days for people to recover from the gut punch. But there will be leaders that have the ability to talk to the president. I think the president's family would get involved if it actually got to that point. It may be that you can repair this damage. Maybe he can come out and show more vigor and show the ability to really stay on track. But, there were some moments tonight that all of us were holding our breath. And that's not the kind of thing you want to happen 130 days out from an election when you've got Donald Trump on the other side of the equation.
Right. Senator Claire McCaskill, very good to have you with us tonight. Thank you, my friend.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.